Hi, and welcome back to SPF21. I'm Andrew Robinson from Volvo Group, coming to you from the ancestral, unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. If you're unsure on whose traditional land you're watching us from, you can visit native-land.ca to learn more, or in the US, indigenousworld.org. Thank you again to Squamish Nation Elder Latash Maurice Nahane for the wonderful traditional welcome this morning. If you missed this morning's welcome, you can always find it in our video and the on-demand library. Next up is driving innovation, the decarbonization of transportation. Decarbonization of transportation is key to reducing our carbon footprint. We've got a lot of trucks, vans, and rental equipment in our productions. Our industry really uses a lot of vehicles. So how can we rapidly decarbonize and reduce the environmental impact of our productions? We're going to be looking at green tech innovations and the infrastructure required for success and explore how that will transform our approaches. So during this session, don't forget to add your questions under the Q&A tab in the chat. Before I go in, I'd just like to thank this year's lead partners, our transformational partner, Real Green, Creative BC, and Empia, our presenting partner, MBS Equipment Company Canada, our signature partners, CBC Radio-Canada and Telefilm Canada, and our Green Marketplace lead sponsor, The Green Shop. Let me now introduce you to our moderator for this roundtable discussion, Scott Kitcher. Scott has over 30 years of financial services experience in investment banking, investment management, private equity, and venture capital. Over 15 years ago, he began focusing on clean technologies and their impacts on sustainability and sustainability initiatives. Today, he's president and CEO of Sustain SoCal, principal at EcoFin Consulting, and he also serves on various corporate, nonprofit, and academic boards and committees, all related to clean tech and sustainability. Scott, thank you for being part of SPF21.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, that was a mouthful. Maybe I need to cut that bio down just a little bit for future speaking opportunities. But I got to tell you, it's been a true pleasure working with you and your team on this event, and generally throughout the course of this year, working with Green Spark Group on other events that we've done together. And congratulations to you and everyone who brought SPF to life. It's been a fantastic event thus far, and I'm sure we'll continue on for many years in the same vein. So, and finally, thank you for including me in the event. So as Andrew mentioned, my name is Scott Kitcher. I am the president and CEO of Sustain Southern California, which is a nonprofit focused on the acceleration of clean tech economic growth and the integration of sustainability initiatives throughout Southern California. We're comprised of roughly 280 organization members and partners, and roughly 3,000 in our key stakeholder ecosystem. In the transportation vein, we act as the one of the advanced transportation centers in California. So on to transportation, and I've heard it mentioned a couple of times through the course of this event that carbon emissions, transportation represents over 50% of this industry's carbon footprint. And as we know, as an economic sector, generates the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the problem. Let's talk about the path to solution, which is the focus of our panel today. Key themes in the panel today will be innovation, the perspective of an industry practitioner, technology solutions now and coming, trends, and policy and regulatory status. So we'll also touch briefly on the recently released Clean BC Roadmap to 2030 and from the BC government, which is reflected in many other roadmaps we've seen in the States. So it'll be interesting, sort of a discussion talking about the trends that the roadmaps are following and the various similarities that they have. So let me now briefly introduce our panelists, and then they will go into a broader overview of themselves and their initiatives. So on our panel today, we have Ryan Doucette, Manager, Transportation Compliance, Warner Brothers; Aravind, Kailas, Volvo Group, North America, Advanced Technology Policy Director; and Kent Rathwell, President and CEO of Sun Country, EV Infrastructure Pioneer. There's a full speaker page with bios on the SPF website, should you care to look into those, into our speakers in more in depth. So with that, Ryan, would you please introduce yourself in more depth? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Scott, appreciate it. And thank you, Andrew, and all the organizers for having me here today. I'm excited to be here. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the unceded traditional territory of Tsawwassen and Musqueam First Nations. I'll introduce myself. So I'm the manager of transportation compliance at Warner Bros., which is a Warner Media company, where I monitor the regulatory compliance of individual productions, navigate the regulatory agencies and identify gaps in the system to improve workflow. So as the Canadian representative of Warner Brothers Transportation, I'm responsible for supervising all aspects of production-related transportation for the company's television productions in Canada. So, well, Warner Media, I'm sure you're familiar with the company, and it's a powerful portfolio of iconic entertainment, news, and sports brands, and our mission is to move people through storytelling. So currently in BC, Warner Bros. Television is producing Superman and Lois Season 2, The Flash Season 8, DC's Legends of Tomorrow Season 7, Batwoman Season 3, Riverdale Season 6, Kung Fu Season 2, and HBO Max will begin shooting a pilot here in December. So that's me.
Great, wonderful. Thank you very much, Ryan. Aravind.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Andrew, and the organizers for having this panel and for having the Volvo Group be part of this discussion. I am calling in from Southern California, Orange County, to be specific, and my role for the Volvo Group in North America is the Advanced Technology Policy Director. And what I do is I help establish our legislative priorities when it comes to connectivity, autonomous vehicles, zero-emission vehicles, and I manage government relations. And just by way of background, Volvo Group, Mother Volvo lives in Sweden. We're a global company, and we're one of the leading manufacturers of medium-duty and heavy-duty trucks, transit and coach buses, construction equipment, and industrial grade and marine grade engines. So we play in the commercial vehicle space. In North America, we are the makers of Volvo trucks, Class 8 Volvo trucks, Class 8 Mack trucks, and then Volvo construction equipment, Nova Bus, and Prevost coach buses, both of whom are headquartered in Canada, of course, and then Volvo Penta, which is our brand for our marine and industrial grade engines. Now, coming back to this panel, sustainability is part of Volvo Group's DNA. We're extremely motivated, and we're being very proactive when it comes to offering solutions, to being part of the solution set globally. In fact, we have made several pledges within the last 6 to 8 months. We want to have no footprint by 2050, basically zero carbon footprint by 2050. So assuming a 10-year life cycle for our products, we have committed, following the science-based target initiatives, that by 2040, all our sales are going to be zero emission. Furthermore, we have also supported the Paris Accord climate targets, and then we're a signatory of the UN Global Compact initiative, and we're also supporting a variety of these 2030 targets. So I'll stop there and look forward to this discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful, Aravind. Thank you very much. Kent.
Sure. Well, thank you again for inviting me to the panel. We've actually been in the electric vehicle space for about a decade. We actually launched to allow zero emission transportation to occur across a province, a state, a nation, and a continent, and we completed that initiative almost 10 years ago. Allowing a 100% zero-emission vehicle to travel across North America, on infrastructure that was already installed, and actually could do it for free. So, we've really pioneered this sector globally. We won the world's best automotive solution that year, and various national awards. But at the end of the day, our goal was just to allow the world to understand that zero-emission vehicles did exist, that infrastructure was there and installed, and you could actually even travel for free, not just save money, but actually travel for free. So that was really the initiative behind launching Sun Country Highway, was to help a lot of the automakers around the world to advance their electric vehicles, or to get into that electric vehicle space, to tie into other vehicles as well, from boats to buses and airplanes. And then to empower them to make sure that they're heading in the right direction, and integrating with a well thought out EV infrastructure that doesn't create problems further down the road, such as with utilities and power transmission systems. So that's really, what Sun Country has been involved in. But because we were, one of the first in the world to get into the space, we've also dealt with other barriers such as first responder training for electric vehicles and mechanic training and body shop training and auto recycler training, because the training didn't exist before. So we've really been a barrier disruptor in the electric vehicle space. Going back to our first year after we electrified the Trans-Canada Highway across the continent, we drove it in the middle of a Canadian winter to prove that an electric car that was faster and more beautiful than most people's cars could actually travel long distances in the middle of a Canadian winter with no tailpipe emissions and for free. So that initiative was really just to spread that message globally, and we just continue to knock down the barriers today, including decarbonizing the infrastructure and going better than carbon neutral and better than carbon negative.
Thank you, Kent. Fantastic. All great introductions, you guys. So well-rounded panel, lots to talk about today. So we'll get right to it. And I think maybe just to sort of set the stage for everyone, for our audience, let's talk about where we are now. What are the current solutions? What's being employed currently? And why don't we start with you, Ryan?
Sure. I can discuss some of the solutions that we've been kind of looking towards while we are trying to decarbonize. We have a whole department at Warner Media that's focused on sustainability. So I've been working with that team to kind of identify certain areas, and many of our productions are very forward thinking and will take the initiatives on their own to identify ways they can decarbonize. But I guess one of the big things that we are doing to decarbonize is to take advantage of the electrical tie-ins that the different municipalities will offer. That obviously will take a generator off the road and all of the carbon that is associated with burning to operate that generator. So there's quite a few around, and in advance of this forum, we did a little kind of survey of our productions to see where they're using them the most, and it just depends on where the productions are relative to the municipalities. But some of the successful ones I think that we use quite a bit are the Vancouver Art Gallery, Molson Brewery in Kitsilano, Vancouver Convention Center. There's Vancouver Public Library, CBC building. They all have great tie-ins. So whenever there's an opportunity to tie into the electrical tie-ins at those locations, we do. So that's one of the main things that we're doing. We've also been trialing an MBS urban power source, which is essentially like a big battery, which will take the place of a traditional diesel generator. So we've been using it for 3 years now on Batwoman, and it's offset some of the generator usage that we've had. It's works really well for certain instances such as work trucks, or the stunt department really likes it, and catering also. It's the new generation ones will have a little bit more power and a little bit more to offer, but it's been a really useful tool for us. And recently, we've been looking at solutions to actually power our diesel generators, and one of them is renewable diesel, which is R100. And we've been working with different vendors to kind of establish a supply of that product. And it's it's just much better. It's reduces the total hydrocarbons by more than 10%, particulate matter by nearly 40%. Carbon monoxide by 25%, and nitrogen oxides by 15%. So it has a lower carbon intensity score, and we're pretty close to identifying and being able to offer all of our BC productions that product, and it comes from sustainable sources. So that's very close. We're not quite there yet, but we're working with our different vendors and with productions to make that happen, hopefully by the end of this year or early next. So that's three things that we're looking towards right now in our efforts to decarbonize, and works. The tie-ins will be, from what I understand, there's going to be more arriving as we move into the future. And hopefully the renewable diesel we can also start promoting for our commercial motor vehicles as well. So lots on the plate right now.
Sure enough, Ryan. Thank you very much for that overview. And Ryan, or Aravind, turning to you now a little bit about what's happening with your medium duty and heavy duty trucks, and what are you also seeing that's out there available now in infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Scott. And the U.S. is, I would say, globally, this topic about zero emissions, it's really front and center. And so I'd like to zoom out a little bit and help set the stage also. And I think one of the recent reports from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I think some of you might be aware of that, but it pretty much said that we're totally screwed. Pardon the bluntness, but basically the 1.5 degrees centigrade target that we were trying to not hit, guess what? We're going to hit that, and we're going to run way past that very, very quickly, as early as 2030. So I think that is the backdrop. And the US, of course, with our current administration, it's also posturing in terms of getting a lot of those things going and trying to see if the US can do its part. And I think it started off with President Biden signing on to the Paris Accord or re-signing, and then there's several other things which are happening this week in terms of passing climate-based legislation and funding for supporting zero-emission vehicles and clean infrastructure. So that's really the stage. And I think, as I mentioned early on, the Volvo Group is very committed to being part of the solution. And we have started in different product portfolios and in different parts of the world, different initiatives. I think what we're seeing here is the political drivers, the geopolitical support is definitely pushing. It's a good tailwind to have in terms of our product line development and putting them in the hands of the customers. This is also helping our customers look at these technologies very, very differently, actually very favorably, and not afraid to dip their toes in the water. A lot of the customers that we work with have their own sustainability agenda. So all those things are really, really good things that are happening in this industry. The technology maturity has happened, is happening, and it's going to continue to evolve. But so all those factors are the reason why we're playing in this space. So I really wanted to come out and set the stage and tell you why the time to act is now. And this is the reason why Volvo Group is having a seat at the table, or trying to have a seat at the right tables. In the Class 8 space specifically, we have the Volvo Class 8 battery electric truck. We also have in the within the Mack brand in North America, a Class 8 battery electric refuse truck. So those are the two big products, if you will. The Volvo truck comes in 3 different configurations. There's the straight truck, and then there's the 4x2 tractors. So we can haul all the way from 33,000 pounds all the way to 80,000 pounds. So it's really a wide range of applications that our Class 8 battery electric trucks can actually support. And as we know, Class 8 trucks, when you look at the heavy duty segment, a Class 8 truck can do many different things: regional pickup and delivery, grocery chain, refuse, and so on and so forth. So I'll stop there, but hopefully I help sort of motivate why we're looking at this so closely now, and a little bit about our product offering in the truck space.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much, Aravind. And Ken, just also briefly, what's the current status of where you are?
Well, we've had a long runway so far, a decade here, decarbonizing transportation. So we've proven that you can, go to zero emission. And the goal now is go beyond that to carbon negative, and then go beyond carbon negative to beyond carbon negative. So that's really our goal now, because again, our global emission targets are not being met, not even close. So we do need to go well beyond carbon zero. And we need to go there yesterday, not in 10 years. So that's really what we've been focusing on. In regards to powering that infrastructure, we can power our charging infrastructure and facilities, say, with zero emission power. But again, we need to go back further than that. And we've been powering our facilities with zero emission power for about 15 years with manufacturing plants, processing plants, cleaning plants, that sort of thing. So transportation wasn't really a big deal. It was just to really get the vehicles electrified so we could actually zero emission them, and then we could take them beyond that. So probably the greatest thing we have, one of the greatest things we have coming out is actually an off-grid power supply, which is a solar power supply with battery backup and a generator system, which can be used using a lot of different types of fuels. But it can power vehicles in level 1, level 2, and level 3. So really big vehicles, really fast, and we can do it completely off grid, but also meter and monitor those carbon emissions coming off that off that system if it's not being 100% solar powered at that particular moment, and then actually transferring that data over to our carbon capture systems, which we will hopefully soon be capturing in real time based upon that. So that will allow us to power film sets and vehicles infrastructure with carbon negative solutions, and actually be able to ship that carbon to site or to those communities that it's being that those carbon emissions were going into. We could actually send that carbon to them. So that's the coolest thing I think we're working on right now.
Thank you, Ken. So as Aravind pointed out, and we know well, we got to step on proverbial gas. Hopefully, it's an electric gas pedal. So let's talk about getting these the new technologies right to market. Where are we now? I know that Volvo and Sun Country and others that I know quite well have been moving aggressively toward not just the automobile, but the infrastructure, the charging, maybe the hydrogen stations, whatever. There's a lot going on in the space currently. So let's sort of shift gears a little bit now and talk about what you guys see, what is developing in your worlds, and Ryan, maybe in your case, what are the needs? What would you like to see happen on your studios? So let's look back around to you, Ryan. You want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, really, a lot has to happen for us to fully transition to electric, and we obviously require a substantial transportation fleet to move our people and assets, including camera, lighting, grip, costume, hair and makeup, trailers, everything. So our energy demands are quite significant. We're trying to make TV, and creatively and logistically, we need to have our finger on the pulse. And right now, there's a lot being done, especially with studios, to add, electric vehicle charging stations to their infrastructure. But when we are talking about large trucks, that's a whole other story. So a lot has to happen to get those charging stations available, and certain locations that we could charge our trucks at if we were to move in that direction. Obviously, our business, we rely on vendors. So we don't actually own a fleet. So we rent our trucks and cars from different vendors throughout the Lower Mainland. So it really is, if they start to offer more options to us, we'll absolutely be looking at those. Some instances we're still dealing with range and distance, because we oftentimes have to do large location moves with long days, and then to actually power those and charge those vehicles, there's some issues. But as for vendors, I'm hoping that there is more of a promotional push for things such as the Clean BC Go Electric Commercial Vehicle Pilots Program, which it encourages and it accelerates the adoption of commercial zero-emission vehicles. So the commercial vehicle pilot program is for BC-based businesses, nonprofits, local governments, Indigenous communities, and eligible public entities looking to deploy ZEV technology in commercial applications, along with supporting infrastructure. So there's things that hopefully vendors will start to see, and we're open to using those options once they become more available to us. So yeah.
Yeah, That's a fairly long wish list, and hoping we get there soon. So, Aravind, switching to you in this question, I guess what I'm going to maybe focus more on you as representing the OEM space. So what's needed to scale the medium duty, heavy duty ZEV market? And then what's a realistic time frame?
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. And I agree with what Ryan said. There's some really important considerations to be made in this very nascent market. From an OEM standpoint, again, this is a completely different product line. And when we're talking about, again, specifically Class 8 electric trucks or even Class 7 electric trucks, you're talking about a battery pack, which is maybe 5 to 6 times more than your Tesla. And the power requirements therefore scale. And so the chargers that are needed have to be that much more powerful. Otherwise, you're just going to be waiting to charge your asset. So you're looking at a very different product line, not just from the vehicle side, but also from the infrastructure side, because they're all high power electronics and more expensive components. To ensure safety, they're also going to cost more. So obviously, one of the big asks from the OEM side to support our customers has been the necessary government incentives to help offset the capital costs that will be needed for our customers and fleets that are willing to take this on. The other consideration to be made is the infrastructure. Again, the level 2 chargers that you see out maybe at your workplace, or the things that you may plug in your garage, they're not going to work for these Class 7, Class 8 trucks. Very different paradigm when it comes to the technology platform. Therefore, this is an evolving supply chain. There are manufacturers that play in both the light duty and the medium duty, heavy duty space. But for them, this product line is, again, a little bit new. Again, this is not just, please, just not to belabor this point, but these are not products sitting on the shelves collecting dust. A lot of times we've had to customize the order, and this is an evolving product line. But we're getting there. We have made great strides in the last 6 months than we have in the last 3 years, for example. So there's definitely that nice tailwind. But again, this is something that the industry has to figure out. Again, when you're looking at big vehicles, the public charging aspect, again, requires a very separate treatment. It cannot be akin to just putting a charger where there's diesel pumps and expecting that the truck will use, or workplace chargers. It's the operation, the economics, the duty cycles, and all the other considerations of how this will be used will really drive sort of the scaling of this infrastructure. So that is all for the battery electric, and you can actually say it's for the zero emission vehicles and infrastructure. But a little plug for the hydrogen. When you're looking at hydrogen fuel cell stations, there's the other aspect of where do you manufacture the fuel and then transporting that, because it's not like where you have electricity conduit lines and the connection to the grid already in most cases, and they have to be upgraded for a high power charger. But for a fuel cell station, again, unless you are producing fuel on site, which is usually not the case, you have to transport it. It's produced somewhere else. And again, that is something which is growing as we speak. And the last thing, and then I'll hand it back to Scott, but the fuel cell is so new that it's only prevalent in California for the most part in the US. So again, there's room to grow, and I think people are figuring out, thanks to the early adopters and a lot of support from the government and state government agencies, how to play in this market and how to scale this. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Aravind. Fantastic. A lot to cover there. And Kent, just again, there's so much to cover here, but in brief, what do you see in terms of the, your world in the electrification side of things?
Well, right now it's really just staying ahead of the infrastructure companies and trying to message that it's a lot more than just putting in a charger, like Aravind said. It's a very complex situation. So the EV infrastructure doesn't start at the charging station. It actually starts with the design of the vehicles and the how fast they can actually take the charge, how fast the battery can take the charge, how long that battery is going to last, etc. and based upon the speed of charging. And then it gets into the manufacturing of the vehicle, sourcing all the components for the vehicle, and then getting to the chargers. But then at the chargers, it doesn't stop there, right? Because the charging is only as good as the power supply at that particular location, number one. Number two, it's the transmission lines and transformers beyond that, with the utility. And then it's the larger scale transmission lines from there to the power plants. It's a very complex situation, and it's not just about throwing chargers in the ground anywhere. It needs to be a very well thought out system all the way through from vehicle design to the generation of the power. So it's not like you just buy a vehicle and then order some fuel, and that's really what a lot of the fleets around the world are dealing with right now. We have a lot of global fleet consultants reaching out now, asking for some support in the EV space, because they know large scale vehicle fleets, but they don't really have the hands-on knowledge or the background in the electrification of those. So it's a whole new animal. It's apples and oranges. So definitely complex. But again, it's all coming together, and it's really just a matter of getting to zero emission transportation, and then to better than zero emission transportation.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I've been noticing quite a few questions coming through the chat, folks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask another question regarding policy, because a lot of what we have to do relies on policy and legislation to kind of get us to that next level. So let me start this time with Aravind, and then we'll go around, then Ryan and Kent, and then I'll turn to the questions in the Q&A. Go ahead, Ryan. Aravind.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what my colleague said earlier and what I maybe remarked earlier, and I'm going to just throw out some numbers. So let's say a Class A diesel truck costs $100,000. The battery electric version will be about 3 to 3.5 times more, and that is before sales tax. And then the fuel cell, I don't even know what the price is for that, because we're still in the prototyping phase. I'm sharing this because just to make the point that this is a new technology. We are taking orders today, and there's a lot of OEMs that are selling this. So it is definitely mature. There are commercially viable products out there, but it's still expensive, early days. So think of 2007 when the first iPhone came out, and how expensive it was, and how expensive the latest iPhone model always is. That is exactly what the industry is going through. So our ask has been to really, working together with OEMs and others to have carve-outs for these zero-emission vehicles, and have specific carve-outs for the more expensive Class 7, Class 8, just to help ease the capital investments. Then there's the infrastructure side of the equation. So again, these are new chargers. And then as Ryan pointed out, again, it is not just as simple as dropping the charger. So there could be significant construction upgrades. These are, this could be a massive construction project, for crying out loud sometimes. So that could run into the millions of dollars. So to the extent possible, maybe some creative investment tax credits or loan programs, or even cash on the hood kind of rebates for the different components. I think we're also recognizing that this is an all hands on deck approach. So we need the entities that support the vehicles, offer incentives for this transition for the vehicles, support the broader infrastructure, there's a role for the utilities in terms of getting things done in a timely manner. So our asks have pretty much been incentives for vehicles, incentives for infrastructure, and then some other market development things where if a fleet is actually owning the asset and running it, in terms of mitigating its own carbon footprint on the road, could there be something like the low carbon fuel standard program in California that is there also in Washington and Oregon, for example? Can we get something like that rolled out at a national level here in the US? I'm sure, especially British Columbia has looked at that concept, but I don't know if it's there in Canada or not. So it's this whole range of incentives. So I'll maybe stop there, but happy to take questions on that.
Thank you. Perfect lead in to Ryan. And Ryan and I we sidebarred on this Clean BC roadmap. Maybe Ryan, would you like to address a few points that were entailed therein?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was quite nice to see that on Monday, this particular roadmap was released by the BC government. It's called the Clean BC Roadmap to 2030. So if you haven't taken a look at that for the audience, I encourage you to do so. There's a significant portion of that roadmap is dedicated to transportation and in many ways the motion picture industry. So, I'll just go over some of the main points that I saw, and I'll try to communicate and discuss how it could potentially, connect to the motion picture industry. So the first point they have is reducing distance traveled. So, if usually we're going to be operating in the local areas, and we're going to be finding locations that are close to our studios, and that's done already as something that we are mindful of when we're shooting. Obviously, the creative considerations have to be paramount, but the good thing about BC is there's plenty of amazing locations to shoot within a local area. So number two, encouraging mode shifting to more efficient forms of transport. So for personal travel, generally means walking, cycling, or taking transit. And in many instances, our crews can do that. They can take public transit to the studio spaces where we're shooting. So it's good to see that they're going to be encouraging that. Accelerating the switch to ZEVs. Obviously, the light cars and light duty vehicle sales, they have set their targets, and that's going to really help. But we're also interested in medium and heavy duty vehicles. So in the roadmap, they say in consultation with automakers, businesses, and industry, they're going to align with the state of California. So a lot of what we're seeing is being driven by the state of California and the policies that are happening there, because there's so much happening. And it's good to see the government of BC is following that lead, because there's some real great stuff down there. Expanding BC's public charging network. Obviously, we've touched on that. That's going to be a really, really significant piece. And, the overall target BC is set as having 10,000 public EV charging stations by 2030. My hope is that they're also going to consider, for medium and heavy duty vehicles as well, because that's going to be a significant part, especially as we get closer to 2030. Next one is making commercial transportation more energy efficient. So that's, we're going to be bridging, but technology can also help in that regard. So, they're committed to reducing the energy intensity of goods movements, and that also includes, hopefully, the motion picture industry. And improving vehicle efficiency is another one. Expanding the low carbon fuel standard. So Aravind mentioned that as well. It requires fuel suppliers to progressively decrease the average carbon intensity of the fuels they supply to users of BC. So practically, we're taking advantage of that in some ways by the introduction of the R100 renewable diesel for our generators, and hopefully for our trucks as well. So the last one is completing the Clean Transportation Action Plan, and I see this one as very important for us. They aim to have a comprehensive clean transportation action plan released in 2023. So that will help highlight additional steps the government will take to reduce emissions in the transportation sector specifically. That also includes ports, and airports, but we're hoping that it will also include the motion picture industry and our needs, because they are significant.
Yeah, fantastic way to summarize very briefly a large document, Ryan. Well done.
Yeah, it's a big one.
A lot going on there. As I mentioned too, it's a lot of those milestones are shared with in California and other states that we've spoken with. So general movement in this direction, which is fantastic in the policy side. Kent, what are your thoughts in terms of your role in policy and legislation that need to happen?
Well, number one, I think it's very important that we try to do things without relying on the governments. So when we electrified Vancouver Island is the first island in the world, or PEI is the first province, state, or nation in the world, or the Trans-Canada is the first continental highway in the world. we did it without any government support and or without the permission. So number one, I think we need to go there, and then that bypasses any partisan politics. Right?
Ask for forgiveness later, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So number one, but number two, politicians and their support staff are always looking for solutions. Yes, they're lobbied. Yes, they're pulled in different directions that don't really make sense a lot of the time, and we have to understand that. And that's why we need to move together as a unit and an industry to try to disrupt our carbon emissions as fast as possible, and really inspire and empower other people around the world and in other sectors as well as our own. So and we've proven that can all happen, right? So now going to policy. It's really difficult if we're completely relying on the governments, right? So, but in regards to vehicle development, I can say that we're working on a lot of technologies. We already have some that are going to disrupt even the electric vehicle to make the electric vehicle a lot more efficient. We know now the electric vehicle can travel with zero emissions, but it's the energy it uses, right? So the energy used in defrosting the windshield, that can be cut by probably 75%. So there's a lot of little things we can do to make that vehicle a lot more efficient, lighten it up. So like for instance, the metro bus sector, virtually every metro bus in North America is illegal. They actually have special permits to be able to travel on the city roads because they're too heavy. That's an issue. So if we can reduce the weight of those vehicles through battery density and lightweighting the batteries, lightweighting the frames and the materials built, used in those vehicles, it's a really good direction. So, policy is wonderful if we can get them to move in that direction. But one of the fastest ways for governments to do things is just to sort of mandate it and then let everyone else figure out how to hit those targets, right? Finally, the fossil fuel subsidies are 14 to 1 in Canada and a lot of other countries. There's way more subsidies in the fossil fuel sector than there is in the electric vehicle sector. So right there, we need to at least have equal, if not a lot more, in the electrification space or the zero emission transportation space. So it needs to start there because there is a lot of money heading in the opposite direction, which is creating the issues.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. Point well taken for sure. So like I mentioned, we have a lot of audience questions. So let's move to those. We had more to cover, generally speaking, within our sort of discussion, but I think these questions from the audience will cover a lot of those issues that we talked about. So first question has to do with rental companies, ironically, Ryan. We talked about that. The question is, what do we need to do to get vehicle rental companies in major Canadian cities to offer EVs?
We're talking two different things. One is, for just regular cars, regular ZEVs for you and I to drive here and there. And that's already happening. There's quite a few things being on offer, whether hybrid vehicles or zero ZEVs that are on offer, and we're taking advantage of them where we can. The other is the medium and heavy duty trucks, right? As a producer of television, we have to be nimble and ready to move. Things change at any moment, and right now, we don't really have any trucks or medium vehicles that we could rent from these vendors. So I think it's right now a factor of cost, but also a factor of just distance traveled between charges and availability of charging stations for these vehicles. So there's a few things that need to happen to kind of get the vendors to a point where they're willing to jump in and purchase these vehicles to offer the production community. So it's coming. You can see it coming, and I've spoken with many of our vendors that provide us with trucks, and it's coming. They just they need a little bit more. They need to know there's a little bit more security in their purchase when it comes to, and it's also the iPhone thing too. You jump in and buy a truck at a certain level, and a year later there's another truck that's available that's 10 times more efficient, and so there's a little bit of fear in that regard of just obsolescence and buying a truck, spending a whole $500,000 on a truck, and then having it it needs to be replaced the following year because there's a newer, shinier version. So those are some of the things that I think the vendors are a little worried about. But all in all, I think it's very positive that we're moving in a good direction, and I think we're going to see a lot more vendors jumping into ZEVs in the very near future. And I think Aravind.
Yeah, you're referring to the technology risk there, Ryan, for sure. Yeah, everyone would get that big time. And I asked you a question when we spoke, just really briefly in response to this. Was there or are you guys putting any pressure on these rental agencies to switch to these ZEV vehicles?
Well, no, there's no pressure. I mean, we have to do our business whatever way we can at this point, but we're obviously open to renting those vehicles. It's just a practicality that if it works for us and we can make it work, absolutely we'll use them. It's gonna save us money and fuel costs, so sure, absolutely. And our mind is always towards decarbonizing our industry. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So Aravind, do you have a response to the question about rental agencies?
Yeah, actually, just 2 days ago, maybe some of you caught this, but Hertz announced this major banner offer for, I think, 100 Teslas or something like that. So I think it was the largest order Tesla ever got. So I think you can kind of see here that Hertz, with coming out, putting its own money, I'm sure there's going to be some amount of state or federal incentives that they will use to sort of mitigate the cost, but still they're sort of taking this, just looking at the writing on the wall in terms of regulations in California and nationwide, and it's just the right thing to do. So that's, to Ryan's point, some of that is already happening, and this one was it just blew me away. Nobody, I think, saw that coming. I speak for myself when I say that. The medium duty, heavy duty sector, I can just say that there's the companies, Penske's of the world, for example, Ryder, they're all sort of testing trucks from Daimler, from Volvo, and they're trying to figure out sort of their piece of the pie. A big bottleneck, if I could use that word, but I say that very respectfully, is going to be the availability of the charging network. To Ryan's point again, absolutely. If the end user has to use this, we're promising about 150 miles on one charge, but then it takes about 70 minutes to get 80% of the charge. That's kind of what we're seeing out in the field. We have proved that over the last 18 months. Other OEMs have their performance metrics, but we have to make sure that is met. And then there is the charging network that can kind of extend this out a little bit here and there. I mean, overnight, it's not going to be 500 miles. And this is just Aravind speaking, but it's very hard to get there. And then overnight, you're not going to have 100,000 chargers all over. So it will happen, it'll evolve, and I think that's going to be the decision point. So somebody who wants to rent this, if their operation is within 30, 40 miles and they can sort of have a place to charge and they can use it for a week, I think they will probably be an early adopter, among the early adopters.
Yeah, thank you, Aravind. Kent, your thoughts?
Right. So 100% agree with Aravind. So Hertz ordered 100,000 electric vehicles. And then the next day, Uber committed to 50,000 of those electric vehicles. So it's happening now. That forces all the other car companies to start renting electric vehicles or buying them, and they have to move now. Otherwise, they won't be around. Electric vehicles are just too efficient and economically wise. But there is issues with the EV infrastructure. So, you can put 1 million vehicles on the road, but if there's not enough chargers, that's a bit of an issue. So we can roll out relatively quickly on that front. And we've got a strategy to do that. We're helping the automakers do that as well. Automakers, they're used to making vehicles. They're not used to fueling those vehicles. It's a whole new world. It's a whole new planet for them. It's really, really complex. And for a lot of the government fleet managers who have had electric vehicles in their fleet for many years, a lot of their employees still use the gas vehicle because that's just what they're used to, and they don't really want to, worry about trying to figure out how to drive this electric or where do I charge it and this sort of thing. So it's just easier for them to grab the gas vehicle. In regards to the governments, the easiest thing they can do is just mandate it. Just say, look, all rental fleets have to have 50% of their vehicles electrified, and then let them figure it out. That's the best way for government to get out of the way and just get it done. And if they want to offer rebates, so be it, because then it's supply and demand, I guess, at that point. But the rental car companies do need to have electric cars first. That's the first step. Electric pickup trucks is the second step, and then the bigger trucks is really the third step. That's traditionally how it would work. Starting with the economy vehicles, so we will have some larger vehicles available, but traditionally we need to see the electric cars pushed into the electric or into the rental car companies first, then the pickups, and then the larger vehicles.
Great answers, guys. I mean, yeah, it's coming. There's no question about it. So Aravind, next question directly for you. Are these Volvo Class 8 trucks readily available now? And what is the price differential to traditional diesel trucks of the same size?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, whoever asked this. The answer is yes, we are taking orders now. We have actually placed more than 25 trucks in customer revenue generating operations. The majority of them are in Southern California. As I mentioned, we're seeing ranges from 120 to 150 miles on a single charge. Over the last 18 months, we have aggregated close to 200,000 miles, just towed it twice. One of them is because the driver, we're telling all these early adopters to go crazy. So yes, we're taking orders now, Volvo and Mack. You can go online and order it. And I'm happy to report that over the next year or so, we'll have hundreds of these trucks deployed because we already are getting orders. And we also have, fortunately, some financial assistance from the state agencies. The price differential, I think I alluded to this earlier, but let's just say it's about 3 times more expensive. So I would say the price differential would be $200,000, US dollars or so in that ballpark, pre-tax.
So, and that is, I mean, we've also talked, Aravind, too, about the infrastructure side of that same question, right? So that isn't quite there yet either, correct? Or is it?
It is not. And then it's the classic trade-off of, I'm going to throw out numbers again, sorry to be a little technical, but let's say you have a 150 kilowatt charger, which will take you 70 minutes to get 80% of the charge. Contrast that versus a 50 kilowatt charger, so a third of the power, but it's going to take 3 to 4 times longer. I mean, it's not necessarily all linear, but you can sort of see the trade-off between getting a less expensive low power charger that's going to take you longer to charge versus a high power, potentially more expensive, not just from the asset, but also remember, I think Ken and I, we raised this issue of the construction work that might be needed. So higher the power, maybe more work that might be needed. So that is something that we're grappling with. And the price points for these chargers could be anywhere from, I don't know, maybe $20,000 to all the way to, you might be looking at a 6-figure amount. So that's kind of what you're looking at for these chargers. Again, this will all go down, but this is kind of just what we're seeing. I mean, these are rough ballpark estimates.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Aravind. So on that infrastructure discussion, there's another question here related to that. And maybe I'll start with you, Kent, on this one. What other MBS urban power source style options are available and which rental houses have them?
Well, there's not a lot, so, the issue is they haven't been forced to implement, right? So when people aren't forced, we don't typically do it, and it can be warm and fuzzy, but at the end of the day, somebody needs to make the first step, and it goes back to when we electrified the whole country and the whole continent almost a decade ago, and created zero emission free transportation in essence. That was the chicken or the egg situation, right? Somebody needed to put in the infrastructure for the electric cars, but we've had electric cars for 140 years, but no one's ever allowed them to travel long distances across province, states, and nations and continents. And so obviously, you could do it with a gas vehicle, so why would you go electric? And so that was our main, reason why we did what we did. And then at that point, automobiles had never been able to travel for free. Well, for the last 10 years in Canada, they have been, almost 10 years, been able to travel virtually anywhere in the country. So, part of this is they need a nudge. And that's where I think the film industry can come in and basically say, look, if we're going to stay all hotels that we have people staying at must have EV chargers for us to even consider staying at that hotel. Number two, all hotels must go to zero emission or offer zero emission nights for us if we're going to be staying at those hotels. So, you can put it on the rental agencies as well, right? The companies that are renting the vehicles or the generators or whatnot to just say, look, we need this, and that's the situation. So it sort of puts it on the other people's backs to get it done and figure it out. And you've drawn the line in the sand as the industry, right? So for instance, I just did a recent survey here. Best Western came out early, almost 10 years ago when we rolled out our infrastructure. Today, the question was, which hotel do EV drivers rely on the most when looking for EV charging? And 63% said Best Western hotels. So that's, they don't have, they're just one of many hotel brands out there. But it shows you what happens when you have first mover advantage. When you actually do care and your actions prove it, people will support you many years or many decades after the fact. So I think that's what I would recommend to the film industry, is to start mandating to their suppliers that this is what we need and let them figure it out.
Hey, thank you, Kent. I'd like to add to that as our productions are sourcing different options, the MBS Urban Power Source is one, and it's a great one. And MBS has other options. Similar, William F. White's International Pacific Backlot, they also offer things called Volt Stacks, which are a company called Valid Power. There's another company, Portable Electric Power. So there's different options out there, not as grand scale as a typical diesel generator for the power. But the whole point about all of this is using every little piece that you can. We have some of our productions that are installing solar panels on the top of their AD trailers and their Star Wagons and things of that, so they can offset their power usage with solar. So there's lots of different options for this. So it's like all hands on deck, whether it's R100, whether it's introducing certain electric vehicles for certain, or hybrid vehicles for cast vehicles. All of these things are on the table, and it's about multifaceted approach to things. And I should also say that down in LA and in Los Angeles and in California, in our Warner Bros. Lot, we do have a fleet of, it's specifically in BC we get from vendors, but there is some desire to also have our own fleet, and that's happening in California, and there's a lot of work down there. I'm not as familiar with it, but I'm speaking to British Columbia. But yeah, it's all different facets to help decarbonize at this point, until we get to a point where we can go full electric with a full scope of charging stations with, vehicles, medium, heavy duty vehicles that can go the distance, that can get our crews and our gear to different locations without having to worry about, losing power on the side of the highway while we're getting to a location. Those things we have to be sure. We can't lose our day if that camera truck doesn't arrive with our camera gear to the location because of a battery that needs to charge for 2 hours. We're in trouble. So it'll come, but in the meantime, we have to look at all the different options available to help decarbonize. And Warner Media, Warner Bros, we're doing that, and we will continue to do that. And we look forward to hearing what else is going to be on offer to us in the near future.
That's fantastic, Ryan. In fact, we've run out of time, it looks like, but maybe just one question and sort of wrap up. And it's a good question to leave on, because it's sort of an action item or sort of a suggestion for all of us to get busy with this a little more than we maybe have been in the past. And if you could all just go around maybe in 10 or 15 seconds and just answer this question to your knowledge. It says, are you aware of any initiatives within production hubs in Canada or the US to promote cleaner fuels such as renewable diesel and hydrogen to reduce transportation emissions? Ryan, Aravind, let's start with you. Maybe not just production, but think of general initiatives.
Yeah, I specific to productions, I'm not aware, but I can tell you that at least parts of Southern California, and also it's going to happen in California, the air district or the regulators are going after non-stationary sources of emissions. And that's an important thing, which will drive some of these warehouses and other operations, which are traditionally not viewed as things on wheels, right? And for those to have zero emission footprint and so on and so forth. So I think there's going to be a natural push. Yes.
Thank you very much. Ryan.
Well, I just like to say that, we have some wonderful folks at Creative BC that are working on this and trying to support all different productions in BC to kind of identify those options and to introduce them. And it does often take the squeaky wheel to knock on some doors, make some calls, find out what's available, see where things, and specifically fuel and R100. But it's not necessarily retail right yet. You can't just go to a gas station and fill your diesel engine up with it. But it's possible that it could be here in the future in BC. I know it's in California right now. You could go to certain 76 stations and R100s on the pump. So we're a little behind in BC in terms of that, but it's coming. I would encourage all folks who are, working in production to just start making some calls and find out, what's available.
Thank you, Ryan. And Kent, your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of pilots, I guess, all over the place. But what we did over a decade ago was we created bio oil to basically zero emission all of our farmers' fleets, all the highway trucks, all the delivery trucks, right from producing the food in the field all the way through to the cleaning, processing, manufacturing, to the warehousing, to the retail stores, and then charging to the retail stores so consumers could charge up there with zero emissions and bring it home. So that's been done for about almost a decade, right? So that, but that's not specifically focused on fuel, but it is a biofuel offset for diesel in most of that value chain. So it really doesn't matter how we get there. We just have to keep chipping away at it and keep moving forward without waiting for without waiting for the perfect solution. We just need to keep moving forward on all fronts. And there's a lot of that, a lot of good stuff happening around the world. So I would say positive on it, but we all need to move forward and try to incentivize others to do the same. As I was saying with the Best Western hotels, right? They need to have the chargers. So the locations that the film crews are staying at, they need to have chargers right away. Why? Well, if they don't have chargers, there's you can't really electrify your fleets very easily. So that's the best way to get started on that front while we're waiting for the rental fleets to electrify, say.
Thank you so much, Kent. I mean, fantastic. We obviously lots to cover. We didn't even get to all of it, but Ryan, Aravind, Kent, thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Andrew.
Wow, what a comprehensive and robust overview. Thank you, Aravind, Ryan, Kent, and Scott. It's really coming, and our industry has a lot to think about. And there's a lot that they can do now to make decarbonization happen, but there's also still some near-term challenges to overcome. Thank you as well to our audience. It's time now to end the session. Please, during the break, go to the event feed, check out what people are saying. There's some polls there, answer them. Those will help inform some subsequent action items. And if you have the opportunity, please be a signatory to the Creative Industries Pact for Sustainable Action. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the next session.